Hey everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be all about books that I did not finish, that I DNF. It's a little book tag that I saw that sounded really fun, so I'll link the original creator down below. I have the questions, but I don't know about you, but I used to be that person that would just never put a book down. Never. You would have to make the book disappear from the planet for me to not finish it. Even though I could have hated it, I would just still stubbornly finish it. And I realized, I think that's the beauty of Booktube. By reading so many books and forcing myself to finish so many books, I realized that I never end up loving them. 99.9% of the time, I hate them still at the end. So why am I torturing myself? I have so many other books I could be reading, I could be finding and loving, and here I am forcing myself to hate read a book. So for the last 2 years, I've been giving myself the reading challenge of putting down books when I'm not enjoying them. And it's been a learning experience. At first, it was really difficult. And this year, I'm having my best year ever. In terms of the amount of books that I finish, I think at the moment I have finished 115 books. And that's without the 20 plus that I started and didn't finish. And it's also the year that I've given the most 5 stars ever on Booktube. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I think I'm finally learning and getting to a point where I'm getting better. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm actually planning on doing a really fun challenge next year, which might be related to that. You'll see. But yes. It's something that I think has improved my personal reading journey, and hopefully you will attempt it too and learn too. But yes, I have the list of questions. We're going to go through them. But first, I wanted to give a special thank you to Atlas Coffee Club for sponsoring this video. They have a coffee subscription, which I had never heard of, and I think it's such a fun idea to discover what works for you. They have coffee from over 50 countries all over the world, and you get to tailor your subscription to whatever you want, the kind of coffee that you want, how often you will receive them. And first off, they have adorable packaging, which, let's be real, I am a sucker for good packaging. And with every package, you get also a postcard from the country that they're from, and which, this is the part I'm really excited about, you get the tasting notes, which am I someone that prefers chocolate, blackberry, brown sugar kind of coffee, or am I more of a almond, pecan pie, and honey kind of person? So I feel like I'm going to get to discover my personal taste that way, and it could also make for a really fun gift because the holidays are approaching. So like I said, everything's going to be in the description box if you are interested, and I will personally be sipping on my coffee from Nicaragua throughout this video. So let's get to it because some tough questions are coming. Question number 1, do you DNF? Okay, I kind of answered that a little bit in the intro, but I used to never do it, literally never. And now I'm doing it more and more. Like I said, this year I've done it over 20 times. And one of my most fun way, favorite way of doing it now is my read it or unhaul it, which this is kind of the hint of what I might be doing next year more often. I love that kind of reading vlog. It forces me to read the books that have been on my shelf, forgotten for years. Speaking of which, I'm almost done with the bookshelf, so this is almost done. But yes, I used to never do it, and now I'm getting better and better. I still feel like some of the books that I'm reading, I'm forcing myself to finish because I'm hoping that they're going to get better. But I've been really learning to put down books that I know I'm going to give 1 star to. The 3 stars are the hardest ones because you're still hoping. But the 1 and 2 stars, I'm really learning to put them down, and it feels really great to not feel like you're going to be in a reading slump every 5 seconds. So yes, now I do. Still not perfect, but I do. Number 2, if you DNF a book, does it count towards your books read for the month? Okay, I get that question actually quite often, and my answer is it depends. Generally speaking, no, especially if I've read only a couple pages or a couple chapters, I try not to. But sometimes I will be adding them to my Goodreads challenge, not my monthly wrap-ups, but only if they were part of a specific challenge. So for example, I did count Crime and Punishment, which let me put it on the screen, because I read over 50% of it, which also is one of the reasons I tend to count it. But it was part of my the book club on Patreon. We're reading a big classic every 2 months. So I feel like because I had so many opinions about it, because I know a lot of people will want to know I've read it or attempted to read it, I did count it, but generally speaking, I don't. Obviously, you can feel free to do whatever you want, but yes, if I read 50% and I have a strong opinion and it was part of a challenge, I will often count them. Otherwise, not really. Number 3, is there a difference between DNFing and just putting down for a bit? For me, there is. For me, there is. If you've been following me for a little while, you might be aware of what I've been calling lovingly my pile of shame. There's no shame involved. I feel like I always get that comment. There shouldn't be any shame. There's no shame. I'm just making fun of myself, as I always do. And yes, I call it my pile of shame because I want to eventually continue, but sometimes it takes me years. And I mean years. And I feel like nowadays I do it less often because I tend to try to be more decisive. But I've definitely found some books that I had put down for a year, 2, 3 years, and eventually gave them like 4 or 5 stars. It doesn't happen as often nowadays, but yes, it has happened, and I will continue to do it every year, usually during the summer, probably like July, August. I will attempt to read books from my pile of shame and try to finish them or just get rid of them. That's the point. So yes, sometimes they go into pile of shame. I'm doing it less though. I'm learning. Number 4, what popular book did you DNF? Crime and Punishment, I just mentioned. I mean, to be fair, if there's a book you're going to put down because you tried and couldn't do it, a Russian classic is probably pretty up there. Like recently one that hurt and that I wanted to mention, but I haven't mentioned anywhere yet. I attempted this year to continue after reading Shadow of the Wind. I tried to continue the series because everyone was telling me how much better it gets, and I read or listened to about an hour of the audiobook of book 2 and put it down. I didn't talk about it because I was hoping I would continue, kind of pile of shame-ish, but let me explain. Okay, book 1, I ended up giving like 4.5, but rounded up to 5 stars. I had that book on my shelf for 6 years unread. I actually read it for a challenge that I did this summer and ended up really enjoying it, except I felt like the sexism just brought the book down for me because every time I would really care about a character, he would say something dumb, and I would just be like, why would you do that? And like, sure, historical fiction, it was more common to be like that at the time, but like, it's still annoying. I'm still allowed to dislike it. So I still finished the book because everything else was so good that I looked past it, but it's definitely something that I mentioned when I reviewed the book. But then I started book 2 and again, put it down at about an hour into the audiobook because there's a scene between 2 characters. Basically, there's a very young man, I don't remember how old he is, like 18 maybe, and there's an older man that takes him under his wing and brings him to, I think the word that was used was prostitute, for him to have his first time, which I just decided, you know what? Why am I doing this? I don't want to read this. I'm not interested. And if it's going to be like book 1, I might as well just stop right there. So I never continued. It's been a couple weeks, months at this point. I'm sure some of you will try to convince me, which like feel free to, because I really wanted to love it once again because the writing style is so different and beautiful. And I don't usually love historical fiction, probably because I keep reading World War II, which I can't take it anymore. There's only so much sadness I can take. So they were different, but it felt like the last drop whenever I was reading that book. I had read a couple books similar just prior, and I was just like, I can't do this. So that's the last like big controversial book that I put down. I'm sure there are other ones actually. Let me double check. Oh, actually, I am forgetting something. Earlier this year, I attempted to read The Witcher. I read book 1, which is technically a collection of short story, and this is going to be my worst of the year. I hope you're excited for my end of the year series. I know I am. I can't wait to use like my sentence that I always do in like the first couple seconds of the video, saying like, oh, like today's video is about like me talking trash about your favorite books and you resenting me for it. I will work on the wording. I will have to rewatch last year's video, but this is going to be one that will get me hate. And it's already been giving me a lot of hate on Goodreads. And I don't care. Because frankly, this book was so ridiculously sexist that I could not continue. And even if you removed all the sexism, which would be like half the book, even if you removed it, I found the book incredibly boring. It's short story, so obviously you don't get as invested emotionally in the characters in the story. And it's pretty much exactly what happens in the first season, or the first 2 seasons at least, of the TV show. So there's nothing new. There's no involvement. The writing is very dry. I mean, it's the translation, so that could be part of it. And then you add all the sexism, and I was like, I can't do this. Like I said, I will be talking about it in my worst of the year. I'll have the quotes. If you're interested, until then, I have it on my Goodreads. Feel free to look. I think I'm number 1 review for that book, so that explains why I'm getting a bunch of hate. But I couldn't do it. It was so bad. Like, I don't want to read about the of a 14-year-old kid. Like, no. I also put down The Shining this year, which it was part of my pile of shame for years because I started it, put it down about 50% into it. And then I tried it again this year during my pile of shame challenge this summer. and I listened to it as an audiobook, and I still couldn't do it. Again, yes, the sexism, because the main character like becomes like, I don't know if he's possessed or whatever, or it's the house that's driving him crazy, or is it the alcoholism? I think that's what the author plays on. I mean, I haven't finished the book, so can it really be a spoiler? I don't know. But the way he talked about his wife in his head eventually got to me. Plus, again, I wasn't super invested, so I feel like it was on purpose this time, at least. But I couldn't do it. I think those are probably the most controversial ones that I put down this year. Number 5, what book do you wish you had DNF? So many. Again, I've improved. I've improved a lot, but I still feel like a lot of books I struggled to do that with. Some of them I ended up like giving 1 star, which really should have put them down. For example, The House Across the Lake. The House Across the Lake? Yeah, by Riley Sager, his newest work. This is going to be also my worst of the year, telling you in advance, because this was a mess. It was a mess. It's like 3 stories shoved, sorry, that was loud, badly together. It makes no sense. You have, once again, the alcoholic main female character, which, there's a huge chunk of information that is withheld from you for like more than half the book, which again makes no sense when you're following the story through the eyes of the main character and she's hiding something big from you. It doesn't make sense. I mean, your head, I should know. So that was definitely one of the ones that I should have known. But there's also a few that, the 3 stars that I was saying, that are difficult to put down. Very recently, I read Killers of a Certain Age. And that's a great example of like really fun premise, but kind of a meh execution. But I just continued because I was hoping it was going to get better. You have these 4 women that are like 60. They're just finally retiring after being assassins for 40 years. I'm like, doesn't that sound cool? And then they realize that someone is going after them, trying to kill them. And like, they're trying to obviously, kill or be killed. Yeah, yes. It was kind of boring. There wasn't enough depth. Like, it would have been an okay movie, but kind of a meh book overall. So yes, there are a few books like that I just forced myself and I shouldn't have. And at this point, I'm just realizing that I've learned to put down usually the books that are really, really bad, but I'm really struggling with the ones that are not terrible, but I can just tell that they will be disappointing. Another one would be like Gallant by V. Schwab or Victoria Schwab. Does she still do that? Victoria Schwab is usually when it's YA or middle grade, and this one was, so like it's on me, I should have known, but I just want to love her work, all of her work, but only the adult stuff works for me. So that was one of the ones that I forced myself. I was listening to it as an audiobook, so like it wasn't hard to finish it and it was pretty short, but it wasn't something I ended up enjoying. But again, I'm definitely improving in terms of learning to put them down. That way I don't feel like I should have. I still do it though. I think it's the toughest ones. Anyway, I'm learning. Number 6, do you ever reattempt a book you DNF? Has it ever been successful for you? This is what my pile of shame is. I feel like I'm learning to distinct between the two too. I have put way more book in my like official never will finish pile than my pile of shame. It hasn't really happened much this year actually, which is probably a good thing. And yes, some of the ones that I've reattempted, I ended up really enjoying. For example, The Song of Achilles. I put that book down about 50%. I was like, it's fine, but I don't know. I put it down and just never finished it. And it took me, I think, 2 years to get back to it and ended up really enjoying it. So it happens. Not usually the case. Again, I feel like the majority of the books in the pile of shame, I will not end up giving 5 stars to, but sometimes. Number 7, what do you do with books you DNF? I unhaul. I have become cutthroat with this. I really don't want my bookshelves to just be full for the sake of it. I don't try to just hoard books, even though I say that with all of these behind me, but I've been pretty good, pretty consistent every June usually. It's my yearly unhaul time and I just get rid of the books that I didn't care for, even the ones that I have finished. If I will never reread them, I don't feel like they represent my taste, I don't really want to see them on my shelf, then I get rid of them. And that includes the ones that I did not finish. So for example, this summer, I was doing my read it or unhaul it, and I did it with a bunch of YA, sci-fi, and fantasy that had been on my shelf for years and I didn't think I was going to ever pick up. And there's a couple of them that are now in my unhaul pile that in June I will be getting rid of. So I'm trying to work on my bookshelves. Ultimately, what I want them to look like is that half of them I have read and I have loved. Those are the ones that I kept. Right now, I don't think that's the case. I think I'm going to do a video. Would you be interested in like me counting how many books I own, and then counting how many of the ones that I own that I haven't read, like percentage-wise, because I think I still own more books that I have not read, and I'm okay with that. I feel like it works for me because I continuously every year get rid of the books that I didn't care for, and usually I've at least attempted to read them. It's very rare that I unhaul a book that I didn't even try. So yes, the DNFs, usually they gotta go, unless they're part of the pile of shame. Number 8, do you choose more or less risky titles because of your stance on DNFing? Yes and no. I think that what helps for me is to use my library. I feel like we sometimes forget about libraries. About 50% of the books that I read every year are from my library or my libraries. I have 2 library cards. Highly recommend you do that if you can. I basically pay a fee to get access to bigger library, to big city next to me. And I use the app Libby. It's like Overdrive but better, and you can put all of your books on the waiting list. I can have like 30 in total because I have 2 libraries, and it's great. Highly recommend if you can have access to that. It's fantastic. So I take risk with these ones because it doesn't cost me anything except for the yearly fee for that one library. So I tend to take more risk, and I'm learning to once again put them down. Not always successful. I think that it depends on the genre. I feel like I'm very stubborn with mystery thrillers. I force myself to finish them even though I'm not enjoying them, but usually they're really quick reads. So like, you know, and because the twist could be really good, see, there are still problems. I think that if I were to look at the books I gave like 2 stars this year, I'll put some on the screen. Maybe you will be able to judge me. I think a lot of these are mystery thrillers. Listen, I go for the ones that are popular because I want to love them too. I can see, you know, everyone is giving them 4 or 5 stars, and then but that's also why this year I've been trying to figure out what subgenres of mystery thrillers work for me. And I feel like small towns definitely tend to work a lot. I'm currently trying to find some in like enclosed space, like murder mystery, but everyone was stuck like on an island or in a room. If you have any suggestions, I think that might work for me. But so far I know that the ones with a little bit of sci-fi tend to be more successful. So yes, I do take more risk, but usually with books from the library. So that's kind of how I'm doing with DNFing books. I would love to hear your take on these answers, or just in general how you feel about putting books down, because I know a lot of you struggle, but once you start doing it, it's almost addicting. Like you can just move on. You've tried it. I often try to do that with like reading one chapter. If I don't know what to read specifically, like if you're feeling in a slump, I feel like a lot of people feel like that with the change of weather at this time of the year. I'll read the first chapter of a couple books and then choose one. But sometimes I realize, you know what, this sounds really terrible, and I put it down. Doesn't happen often, but practicing, it does make perfect, sadly. So yes, I'm definitely going to be continuing unofficially to do this challenge in the upcoming years. But I think I've improved a ton. Again, I've put down about 20 books so far this year, and I probably have time to do it a couple more times, maybe, before the end of the year. And I will definitely be doing that next year because, again, wink, wink, there will be more read it or unhaul it. I hope you're excited because it's become one of my favorite challenges. It's really difficult to do it, but I know how satisfying it is to watch it. Even when I rewatch, I'm like, oh, that was fun. At the moment, it doesn't always feel like that, but it's fun to look at. So I will be doing it more. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, including I did a video all about big books that I've read because of Booktube. Some of them worth it, some of them not worth it. And then I also did a really fun video about unhinged female characters. If you like revenge stories or just really strange stories sometimes, or morally gray characters, I would highly recommend you check that one out. And I will see you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye.